Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Inspirational Interviews. I'm Hannah Levin with Heartfelt Wellbeing, and this is our last inspirational interview, period, and our last inspirational interview for 2020, which is really exciting because it's all about using your voice and your voice being a powerful tool. So I'm super excited for you all to experience the wisdom that will be shared in this inspirational interview. And I just want to remind you all that we are going live using StreamYard. So in order for me to see who you are when you comment, please give StreamYard permission by clicking the link with this video so we can see your name. And feel free to ask questions along the way too. You can type in your questions into the chat. So without further ado, I'm going to welcome Brienne. Hello.
Hello, Hannah. Thank you so much for having me. This is wonderful. Thank you
Yes.
to all of you who are joining as well.
Yes, we have a few people on right now, and I'm sure more will join shortly. So I would love to just start with you telling us a little bit about who you are and how you came to work with the voice.
Sure, absolutely. So, as Hannah said, I am Brienne. I am a speech and voice pathologist turned vocal empowerment coach. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. And I'm the owner of Your Vocal Vitality. And that is a business that I started a year ago, but the seed had been planted probably 2 or 3 years ago. And it essentially stemmed from this trend I was noticing as I served folks in a medical clinic setting. So I worked for over 13 years in voice clinics, a couple different ones throughout the country, Emory Voice Center, Vanderbilt, and most recently at UW-Madison. And assessing and rehabilitating voices is my specialty. And that is something that I came to probably back in undergrad when I was in a linguistics class and loving what I was learning about sound and acoustics. And as a recreational singer for fun, knew that I wanted to still be involved in some way with the voice. And it started to kind of cultivate this love of how can I be kind of in that support, kind of on the wings of people who need to use their voice. And so from there, I was able to find out about essentially these letters, SLP. I had no idea what those meant at the time. and the fact that in that particular profession, there are specialties that people, if they choose, can work into. And I discovered that voice specifically is a specialty. And from there, I just made it my mission to get into a program. I went to the University of Iowa that helps kind of cultivate voice as a lot of the curriculum and kind of set the path for meeting folks that allow for training specific to it. And the reason that's so important to me and I get so passionate about it is because while yes, I recognize I might have a bias towards specialties, it does strike me as something that we are naturally drawn to. You know, what is that thing that person is experienced with? Similar to yoga, gosh, how many different ways can both you bring your unique gifts, but also specialize in different, capacities and modalities. So that's the way I feel about voice. I feel really strongly that people can work with someone who helps with voice, but to take it that deeper level and know that you are in the care of a specialty kind of knowledge, I think just really makes me feel fortunate that I get to do what I do. So I did that for 13 years. And when I noticed that I really wanted to serve more people in a bigger way, not only in my community, I live in Madison, Wisconsin, and recognize that I could now do it beyond, even once 2020 came along, that really shifted into something I've been passionate about for a long time, which is helping women, particularly because the women who would come into the clinic would have voice changes that sometimes came from structural issues. Something was physically wrong. We would scope. I've seen a lot of larynges in my day. So we would scope and make sure everything was okay. And yet at the same time, when the structure was quote unquote typical or normal, there were these physical manifestations that had started to change. And so it really got to be apparent that some of the, stressors, emotional or otherwise, had really impacted the voice. For some people, I say stress impacts them and they get stomach ulcers, and other people, it's their voice. And so as that started to become more apparent, and I was doing my own self work in how that looks for people to really take stock of what their voice means to them and how they use it, I thought, man, this would be amazing to be able to bring that in a bigger preventative health way. And
Mm,
wellness has been a part of my life for a long time, and that's I think one of the many reasons that you and I resonated, Hannah, because I mean, anything related to holistic care is something I'm really passionate about, and yoga goes into that. I used to refer my therapy patients many times to any alternative modalities, including yoga, because there has to be a mind body holistic experience
yeah.
to any healing that we're going through. So as an aside, that is something that I felt really strongly about. Okay, how do I get out there in a preventative health way, kind of like the way we think of heart health? Everybody knows about heart health, like, oh, okay, I got to work out this many times a week and I got to eat healthy. And the voice is an organ as well that can be prioritized in that way. And
Mm.
so I'm on a mission to make that happen in a bigger way.
Yay! Yeah, I love it.
Yay.
And I remember the first time I heard your voice, I was like, she has such a lovely voice.
Oh,
Like it's like a sing-songy voice. Kind of like it just flows so easily. And I was like, wow, I could like listen to her all day long. So beautiful. Like
oh, that's so
just
sweet.
beautiful, beautiful voice. I'm like, yeah, she's got something there. She knows something that I don't know. Talk to me a little bit. There are these two terms that you use that I'm curious to hear you explore and explain a little bit. So the first one is vocal athletes, and the second one is your voice as a vital asset, which maybe you just explained a little bit. Um, but
Mhm.
yeah, so will you dive into those terms a little bit?
Absolutely. So let's talk about it in terms of the vocal athlete first. So, a vocal athlete is considered someone who requires their voice to do their job. If we had to look at it, let's say in a percentage, we could say that someone who talks more than 75% of their day or week in order to do their daily activities would be considered a vocal athlete. Now,
Mm,
one parallel to this and where this term derives from is in the singing and performance and musical theater world. And that makes a lot of sense to folks. They're like, well, yeah, they're a singer. They got to do 8 shows a week. I get it. And that's not who we see every day. Don't get me wrong, it's fun to see the singers, but that's not who we would see every day in the clinic. Those folks who are the teachers, the coaches, the educators, the CEOs, the lawyers, the customer service representatives.
mm,
Those are all vocal
yeah.
athletes. Absolutely. And then enter 2020 and people are talking more virtually, and
Mm,
you have to, either be live more or interacting with your voice in a way that connects even more than we had already as human beings had this gift to do. So to me, a vocal athlete is like you would think of your job requires your voice, and how are you going to treat it and prioritize it in a way that an athlete would who has their coach kind of helping them along. So that's the way I think about it.
great. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then when it's an asset, I consider that is one of my convictions in my business. The voice is a vital asset. And essentially what that means is an asset. When you look at that, that is something you're going to protect. That's something you're going to invest in. And that's something that will have dividends. And so
Mm,
when you do that, look at this instrument in that way, because of how we communicate with it, especially when we think how often people take it for granted, which I
yeah.
get. We do. We wake up, we think we're going to start talking, no big deal, and then laryngitis hits or a stressor hits and something seems off with the voice, and you think, oh, it's fine, it'll go away, it'll go away. 3 months later, 6 months later, something's still not right. And so what is it that those early signs can show you about how to prevent and protect that as an asset? And then along with that, if that asset has a kind of bank, if we think of it that way, our voices are so resilient, but they are not invincible. So we kind of think of it in terms of, if you're going to replenish, you're going to start off, let's say, with X, Y, or Z amount ability to voice during a week. Are you replenishing often, or are you depleting and depleting and depleting to the point that you're kind of running on fumes?
Mm,
And when that happens, people experience things like vocal fatigue, more throat clearing, feeling like they don't have any stamina, like their voice is weak. And again, it's like Yeah, I'll rest, I'll wake up in the morning, it'll be fine until it's not. So that's where I think of it in terms
Right.
of being an asset. Because if you don't have your voice, you can't do your job. So yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, I've thought about that a lot. Yeah,
Mm,
and we have a saying in Ayurveda, like, you can do something until you can't, like, we can
yes.
kind of push
Yes.
ourselves, and our bodies
Hmm.
will do the best they can for a really long time
Absolutely.
until they can't
Absolutely.
anymore. Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, so
The
voice is
well-being,
included.
it absolutely included the well-being piece is that our bodies, some people like to say they're lazy, they want to do the simplest thing. But in essence, efficiency matters. How
Yeah.
efficient can you be in your movements? How efficient can you be in that moment where I always love when I get the reminder in my yoga practice of the structure of the pose and the softening within the pose. I'm like, oh
Mhm.
yeah, that's how I'm going to keep cultivating the energy to get through this practice.
Right.
And so it reminds me of that too. And the voice is similar. We know how it works efficiently. We don't know all of it. There's still a lot of mystery to some of that. And yet to be able to say, you can push it and push it like you're thinking it'll just go forever. I think also disregards honoring what it does for you already, and
Right.
so that's, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I know now in the business that you are doing now, women's
Hmm.
empowerment is a
Hmm.
big part of that.
Yes.
So tell us about that in
Yeah.
connection with using the voice.
Yeah, so this stems from both a little bit personal and professional situations. The things that I used to hear for myself and within like the context of folks who would come in for voice assessment is sometimes things as simple as, well, people are saying they don't understand my tone of voice. I'm getting chastised for the tone of my voice.
Mm,
Or I was judged. I had a client when I was in the clinic. She came in very big personality, very talkative, just a lovely human. And I'm thinking, okay, well, it'll be interesting to hear what her voice concerns are because, auditorily, like I wasn't picking up anything just yet, except for the loudness of her voice. She was just a
mhm,
louder talker. And she said, well, I was at a wedding and we were outside for the reception, and she was having fun and she was talking and laughing, and not only was it people, but the people were her family. They made fun of her and shamed her publicly for being too loud
mm,
at a party where she's enjoying herself outdoors for
mm,
all things. So those kind of moments. And then on the flip side, moments where it is this disconnect. Like you say something. Have you ever had that experience, Hannah, where you say something and yet the words don't match the tone, or vice versa? You're listening to
yeah,
somebody and you're like, something's off there.
yes,
So that's what I call dissonance, and
mm,
and that comes from an acoustic phenomenon. But when that dissonance happens and the tone doesn't match the words, we humans are good at picking that up usually,
yeah,
but then take it that next step. And when the person, the speaker, doesn't know, and that's what I found myself in most of my 20s, was like,
mhm,
what do people mean? What do they mean my tone is off? It just wasn't landing. And that came about because I didn't have connection with my inner voice. I didn't
mm,
have connection in the integrity of what my inner voice was saying. I wasn't listening, and therefore what was coming out didn't match. And I recognized at some point that it was from a lack of self-worth. And
mm,
so once I was able to transform that for myself, I started to spot it in so many of the women who would come into the clinic, and they would make these gains and then something would hold them back and they just wouldn't get to
mm,
that point. And that's where I feel like this underlying sense of lacking self-worth, it can show up in a lot of ways. It's a lot of
mhm,
ways for each unique person. And that's the just as unique as our voices are, as our instrument. And yet, when it shows up and you can't even speak what you need to, you can't allow yourself to be heard as you truly are,
mhm,
that's where I got really, really excited about the interplay. So,
yeah,
that being a way to empower women to be heard, to stand up for what they believe in, to have a voice literally as your message, the way
yeah,
you are bringing your message to the world, and to be aware of bias, right? We all have
mm,
implicit bias. A, B, societal and cultural, like I was saying about just being judged, look at how often, even most recently, topically related, how many times Kamala Harris was judged for how her voice sounded. Too
Mm-hmm.
shrill, too this, too authoritative. What does that even mean? And notice how it's more women, mind you, than
Mm-hmm.
men. Men rarely get chastised for how their voice sounds.
Mm-hmm.
And so then we have that interesting interplay of women also who aren't connected to themselves, I find, trying to change their voice to be
Mm-hmm.
more authoritative, or they'll lower their voice thinking that sounds like it's going to command a space. And I want
Mm-hmm.
people to find their most natural voice. That's
Mm-hmm.
the way we connect in the world. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So it sounds like a mixture of the concrete tools, but also connecting to the intuition
exactly.
and that deeper self-trust
Exactly. It's like two sides of
that
the same
comes.
coin, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
beautiful. I love it. Yeah. I just want to read to you, Mara said, love.
Oh, it's a little bit frozen.
Uh-oh. Am
I
I
know.
blipping out here? I think, I think we're back. We're back. Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
It's almost there on
Oh,
my end.
okay. Hopefully. Okay. So,
There we go. If
oh,
you
Lauren, you two together today. Um, and then Mara also says it correlates like the Brahman breath. I think you might mean Brahmari breath, bumblebee breath that we
Oh, the
hum.
Brahmari breath.
Maybe
Yeah.
that's what you're talking about, Mara.
Hmm.
And yeah,
Yeah,
and she
that's a
says
great
dissonance is
example.
real. Ah, the inner voice. Yeah,
Yes. I love that.
yeah. Oh
Yes,
yeah,
it
she
really
says joys
is.
of rural internet. Yes,
I love that. Yeah, actually
yeah.
just that's funny you mentioned
So
Brahmari breath. Oh, go ahead. It was cutting out. My apologies, Hannah.
no, go ahead. Go ahead. I was gonna change this. No, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's funny she mentioned the
Are
Brahmari
you
breath. I
there?
just
Uh-oh.
finished
Okay.
up there. Oh, there we go. Sorry, all. It's been a kind of twitchy day for the tech. I just finished up with a client yesterday who is also a yoga instructor, and she's very experienced with Brahmari breath and all the breath practices, and yet her voice had still felt strained and pushed, and she was pushing a lot from here in this part of the instrument. And
Mm,
she's like, I know my Brahmari breath, we do the humming and we do the chanting. And it was just so cool to know that she came to our work still as open-minded and willing to explore. That's the idea, exploring how the voice can further be amplified. And she was able to not only relieve the strain so she could teach online just like you are doing, but also sense that
mm.
at one point she called it a kind of a spiritual connection that she made, and she was in her voice exercise practice, not her Brahmari practice. And so I just thought that was really beautiful. That again, that collaboration, is completely magical when it happens.
Yeah,
So yeah, yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Beautiful. Yeah, there's always more that we can learn for sure.
Oh yes, yes.
Um, so we had talked about you doing things that Brienne is a vocal. Oh, we're blipping
I
out.
know it's flipping just a little bit, but I heard you say we had talked about. I heard that part.
So you what do you do? A voice consultation? Is that what you do
Mm.
with people?
That is, yes. Often, if folks are feeling like they need to kind of explore what their goals are for their voice, yes, I can do a full call with them to kind of help them navigate that and hear more about what's going on with their voice. But some of the things that I found, even in the shorter term, that have been helpful for folks is a free voice review. And essentially, what that means is I take a
Oh,
2 minute snippet, as it were, and that snippet can be anything from you introducing yourself, talking about something you're passionate about, in the DMs or in the voice texts. Also, fun fact I'll throw in for everybody. I can't tell you how many times folks have been really, really touched and connected with the fact that I leave them voice DMs. So if you haven't tried it, I encourage you to get confident and give that a try, because that really really brings joy to folks. And so just know, if you're like, oh, I don't know if I want to leave a voice mess, a voice text with that, I just encourage you to try that. So that's just a little tip. But yeah, the reviews are great because it's a way for me to hear the quality. I'm always listening, for the quality, to make sure that everything's healthy, for the flow, for the intonation, what Hannah was mentioning earlier with the sing song. That's the intonation or the inflection, for the
Right.
rate of speech, for the
Yeah.
breath control, that kind of thing. So then I just provide feedback to be able to kind
Yeah.
of give you a sense of where your voice presence is at.
Yeah. So we had talked about putting me in the hot seat here and you doing a little analysis or
I love it.
reflection on what you've heard in my voice. So are you up for it?
I am totally up for it. Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Let's do it. Awesome. So in, just like Hannah was saying, in this context, so Hannah and I have been going back and forth. So I've had a chance to hear different aspects of her voice, and even through her yoga videos and things of that nature. But essentially, I want to start with, first, definitely the wonderful features that jump out right away. Your voice is very gentle. It's friendly and pleasant. It has a lovely, easygoing, vibrant quality to it, which I love, and it really connects to people. So no wonder you do what you do. The overall quality is clear. So when I'm listening for things like clarity versus a scratchiness, a raspiness, airiness, things of that nature. So there's different qualities that come in, and overall there's clarity to it. And your rate of speech, intelligible. So that means it's not too fast, it's not too slow. The words are clear. So yes, we've been talking about voice today, but then of course the other component is speech and how we're shaping that sound in that way. And the
Uh-huh.
intonation is also great. There is that inflection to it that brings a naturalness. There's no monotonicity or robotic nature to it, which is wonderful. And then with your breath groups, your voice flows. So some of y'all might know folks who really talk and talk and talk on one breath, and then they're still talking, but you recognize they probably should have taken a breath like three sentences ago. And then the voice sounds like this. So I'm
Yeah.
sure you all were like, can she breathe? Is she going to breathe? But Hannah's voice, definitely your
Yeah.
voice
Breathe.
flows with the
Breathe.
breath groups. Yeah, exactly. Just breathe. And so
Breathe.
that is all the wonderful features that I saw. And then one aspect from an overall vocal health component. This is an aspect that we all do. So I just want to make y'all aware this is a normal thing. And you might hear it in your own voice. Sometimes I hear it in Hannah's voice. Goodness knows my voice can do this, especially sometimes in the morning. But it's this component where the voice wants to drop into the throat. And so when we do that, that is, again, a natural phenomenon. If it stays there, though, that is going to ultimately be very inefficient. So your voice will get tired
Mm.
quicker. It won't project as well. And so most people pop in and out of that. The people who stay there a lot of the time may sound like this, where they're talking in their throat and it just kind of hangs out in this kind of gravelly sense. That's called glottal or voice fry. And when that
Mm.
happens, it's, again, a very natural phenomenon. It depends on how long you stay there and what you're doing with it. So sometimes I hear it dropping in, but then you pop right back out. So for
Mm.
you to listen for, if you ever notice, gosh, I'm like more in my throat today, and you're not
Mm-hmm.
really noticing any other symptoms, as it were, no colds or allergies or anything like that, then what I would suggest is being able to really connect that your breath and voice energy are aligned again. And that keeps that voice forward moving. So would you mind doing a comparison for me, Hannah? Can I run you through something?
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So I'd love for you to count 1 to 5. And by the time you get to about 4 or 5, I want you to purposely drop your voice into your throat. So it may sound like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Can you try that
Okay.
for me?
Sure.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Mm-hmm. Now, it may physically, you can hear the
I'm like,
difference, yeah. Right. Hannah's ear is really good. She can definitely hear the difference, and that's awesome. Not everybody can, and that's okay too.
Mm.
Sometimes people can also, the second important piece is, I can hear a lot of things, but you are the one who feels it. So the second
Mhm.
piece is to notice what you feel about it. So notice as
Mhm.
you do, you're going to do it one more time. Same thing.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Notice if you feel any sensation shift.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Anything?
Yeah, it feels like a constriction in my throat.
A constriction. Okay. And that's a common sensation that people get. And can you kind of point, Hannah, to where you feel that constriction by chance?
Um, right here,
So
like
where
on either
Hannah,
side.
yeah, on either side even. Okay. So where Hannah's pointing is literally at the top of her larynx. So our larynx is here, FYI, everybody. Not everybody knows where it is, and that's okay too. And our vocal folds sit right behind our Adam's apple in this configuration. So not up and down, but horizontal like this, and they open and close. So she was feeling it right along the sides, which is the muscles outside of that space that can constrict a little bit, plus the airflow getting reduced. Now I'd like you to try it, keeping the airflow connected. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
And again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Change up the inflection a little bit.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Now you're going to add a little more, kind of turn up the energy a little bit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like the voice is going to live right up here, not in this space here. Can you try that for me?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Beautiful. Yeah. So in that
Yay!
way, was there any constriction during that component?
No.
No, because you were using that energy efficiently. And especially, like you said, with your background, even in acting training, that's a lot of where original voice therapy techniques came from,
Mhm.
interestingly enough, stemmed from like early acting training. This idea of bringing the resonance. So we were talking about dissonance, the resonance of the voice up and forward so that you are truly giving yourself that kind of natural stamina, that natural unique sound a chance, because every time you
Yeah,
drop it back down here, and not you specifically, Hannah, but if people live in this space, that's not your natural sound. And so it's
right.
interesting to hear folks get like the way you were like ooh to that sound, hear folks get a little like shocked to hear their own natural voice because that's not what they've been listening to
Mm,
for a period of time. So
yeah,
yeah, so thank you
yeah.
for doing that with me.
So, thank you. That was really fun, and I
Yeah.
hope it was helpful for people that are watching and listening. Mary just typed in, "Any tips for lecturing in a classroom while wearing a face mask would be appreciated."
Mhm.
It sounds like maybe what you just shared with me could be
hmm
helpful for one,
Absolutely, for
but
one thing, and we
yeah.
can take that a step further. And I'm mindful of time here for your group, Hannah. So Mary, was it? Two things, Mary. So
Mhm,
one, first and foremost, any educator, any teacher, I'm going to 100% recommend a microphone. 100% of the time, you will
mhm,
do so much less work vocally if you can have. There's portable ones. I don't know if you've seen them. If not, connect with me. I'm happy to send you some options that yes, you have the mask on, but it's still really important to have that mic so you don't have to work as hard. And then, like Hannah was saying, the second thing would be how can you bring your voice more forward so that yes, whatever can resonate through the mask still does. And one of the other ways to do that, besides connecting to your breath, is to hum. And just like the Brahmari breath we were talking about, an easy, simple way to get your voice forward. So if you would all try this with me, we're just going to do a little hum slide down. Hmm.
Should I mute
Yes,
myself
please.
so
I
we
would love.
oh,
Oh,
you
go
want me
ahead.
to
I would
join
love for
you?
you. I would love for you to try it. Yeah.
Okay.
And
Hmm.
again. Hmm.
Hmm.
Now, there's going to be a portion in there. Hear how Hannah was it, and even in your own voice, where it goes from high to low. But there's a middle section in there that's kind of like the sweet spot. Okay, so see if you can find that spot. Like for me, it happens to be right about there. Okay.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, that's okay. That's a good try.
Hmm.
That's about
Hmm.
your spot. And you
Hmm.
can tweak it.
Maybe.
You can, yeah, right. It's kind of fun to explore.
Hmm.
You can try a little higher, you can try a little lower. But all that to say, Mary, that's a great way to at least kind of get your voice landing in a spot that feels comfortable to start with. So that would be two of my main recommendations.
Great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, we're at the end of our time. You've done some really great things with us. I hope people have tried along with you,
I know, me too. Have fun with it.
along with us. Um, so where can people find you and
Yeah.
how can they take advantage of what you have to share?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Hannah. So
Yeah.
I am here on Facebook. I can be found at Your Vocal Vitality, my business page. Feel free to DM me directly. That is okay too. I also have a Facebook group for women to empower their voices. So I would love for you to join in. And I'm on Instagram as well, and now newly on Clubhouse for those who are as well. So I would love to hear from you guys.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so
And
much.
did you want to give a little offer to folks for?
Yes. So that voice review that you saw Hannah bravely join in on, that is something I'd like to offer to any of you who are curious about your voice or just want some feedback again about the quality, the flow, the presence, the intonation. And so we would connect. So you can drop the word voice in the comments below. And I'm happy to connect with you and kind of give you the rundown of how that would work. And it would be wonderful to serve you in that way. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing your expertise with us
Yeah.
today and for the awesome work you're doing in the world. It's so
Thank you,
important.
Hannah. I appreciate this so
Yeah.
much. And to you and your community, I wish you a beautiful new year. Can't wait for your workshop coming up. That's gonna when your retreat. That's gonna be so cool.
Yeah.
So best of luck with all of that. And thank you again for having me.
Thank you. Yes, and
Yeah,
Happy New Year to you
yeah,
too.
thank you.
All right. We'll talk soon. Bye,
Okay,
everyone.
bye.